Hello, and welcome to episode 17, all about the Great River. Chapter 9, Book 2, A Fellowship of the Ring, being the 17th part of That's What I'm Tolkien About. Hello, my name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. Seriously, just call me MC at this point. I'm done with it. Just whatever. And today I'm joined by Ryan, once again, from the Sorta Star Wars podcast. Welcome back.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited because it's getting now to the end of Fellowship of the Ring.
We're very close.
Yeah.
Now, last time you had me on, I used my Kindle to read. This time, I thought I want to get actual paper book, but I got this book that's the entire Lord of the Rings book all in one.
Oh, so is it like a brick?
Yeah, it's huge, and I feel like we're close to the end of the Fellowship, but I'm like barely anywhere in this book. So like reading it, I'm like, oh, we got a ton of story to go, but we're really close to the end of this book.
Yeah. And I guess now you're reading it as Tolkien technically originally intended it, which was as one complete book.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, for me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm at the end of the book. It was very ominous for me as I like turned the final page in this chapter. And then on the next page, it showed chapter 10, the breaking of the Fellowship. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. It's happening.
Yeah, it's like one of those you talked about before, how Tolkien likes to spoil his own chapters with the chapter titles.
Oh my gosh, so much. Because and we'll talk about this a little bit as we get into the to chapter 9, but I 100% was like, oh, well, if chapter 10 is called The Breaking of the Fellowship, I guess something really intense happens in chapter 9 that causes the breaking of the Fellowship. So,
yeah,
like, this is a huge spoiler alert for his own book.
Yeah.
Like, going into chapter 10, you have no idea that I just figured out what the breaking of the Fellowship means. They're going to go to, because the chapter 9 ends with them being like, right. Are we going to go to Minas Tirith or are we going to go to Mordor together? And then Boromir's going to be like, I'm done. Peace out. I'm going to Minas Tirith. Y'all have
Minas
fun.
Tirith no matter what you say. Yeah.
Y'all have fun. Listeners, speaking of our good friend Boromir, this is where I must bring up. I learned what one of my friends said was probably one of the biggest spoilers, which is that Boromir dies.
Oh.
And, yep. I did a Google search. It said Lord of the Rings cartoon series. And it showed a couple YouTube clips and it was like, Lord of the Rings, 1976, animated. And then the next YouTube clip was something else. And then the third one was Lord of the Rings, 1976, Boromir's death. And I was like, it was a very slow settle. I tried to convince myself at first that it wasn't that big of a deal. And I was like, that's fine. I don't care that I know that Boromir dies. And then the longer I sat there and thought about it, I was like, no, this actually just really upsets me a bit. Like,
I thought you might even be like sort of maybe not really but kind of happy.
Well,
right?
See, that's the other
you weren't a huge Boromir fan if
I'm
I remember
still
correctly.
Not, and especially we'll get to that in this chapter too. But like, once again, the longer I sat with it, I was like, I mean, it makes sense. Like, of all the people in the Fellowship to die, aside from Gandalf, I'm like, yeah.
Who could we pick?
Boromir. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
can I say something before we get too far into this? Question for you, and this chapter really reminded me of it because it talks about how Boromir is kind of like...
the worst?
Looking... Well, and also he's like people notice him like looking at Frodo in a certain way, or like he's talked before about using the ring, and it kind of brought up a question for me: how do these rings actually work as like rings of power? Because like I think about Galadriel's ring, and like what does that ring? She is one of the 3 rings that the elves have, and what is it that gives her the power from the ring? Is she magical without the ring, or is it just the ring that gives her power?
This is a great question.
Like, because elves are magical anyways, right?
I guess I don't know. It's hard because the only ring that we have a like first person point of view perspective, or what is it? It's the different types of point of view. I know there's omniscient where it's like, I don't know. Basically, our point of view in this book is it's as if Tolkien is standing over the shoulder of Frodo. but we're seeing and experiencing and feeling the things that Frodo feels. So the only knowledge we have is what the bad ring feels like.
Right.
So, which is bad. and we know that it does bad things. So I'm not sure what the Elvish ring is like. Well, I guess it...
But they're all made by Sauron, right? I mean, he made them all.
Yeah.
No?
Wait, okay. Let's go back to the infamous poem.
This just says 3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. Is this the thing you're talking about? 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone, 9 for the mortal men doomed to die, 1 of the dark lord on his dark throne, in the land of Mordor where the shadows lie.
Let's see. Okay. The enemy still lacks one thing to give him strength and knowledge to beat down all resistance, but he lacks the one ring. The 3 fairest of all, the elf lords hid from him, and his hand never touched them or sullied them. Okay. All we have to do is...
His hand never touched the elves.
Yeah.
Unlike the 9 mortals who got the rings, and
because those are the ones that turn them into ring wraith.
Yeah, but what was the power in it? Like, how did it turn them bad? Did it just give them a lust for power?
Well, I think it's because it says that he never touched the elvish rings, and it said never touched them or sullied them. So the fact that it says 9 he gave to mortal men, proud and great. So first of all, the men were proud and great to begin with. So it was kind of like having the beginnings of being easily manipulated. Oops, I hit my microphone. It's fine. I'm a professional. I'm a professional who turned my microphone in the correct direction only recently. What was I saying? Yeah, the men from the beginning, before they even got the rings, already had this potential to become bad and manipulated. And I guess the fact it says he gave them the ring, so that implies that he never touched or sullied the elvish rings, but if he had touched the 9 rings, that means he did sully them. Anyway, yeah, I'm assuming that the elvish rings are not... I'm assuming they're okay because we see Galadriel wearing the ring. So if it was bad, she wouldn't have been wearing it and showing it off. Guess
something about those that Sauron cannot sense when they are being worn, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it's just because the one ring is the one ring with the greatest power that he has, I guess, the strongest connection to. So he can, I guess, feel it more. And the elvish rings were, I guess, forged with like pure, beautiful magic that the elves have. And I don't know. And the other thing that I'm thinking about too is that in the chapters when we're in Lothlorien, we get a lot of descriptions about how Galadriel seems it looks like she's doing something very powerful, or she has this like air around her that's like, I am the greatest elf here, but you aren't gonna know about that because I am also a humble elf. So I guess her like extra power, I'm specifically thinking of when she looks at the fellowship and she like stares into the depth. She looks them each in the eyes when they first get there to kind of mind read them, to see what their true intents are, to see if they're going to stick with this to the end. And I guess that extra power comes from the ring that she's wearing. Because the elves also do say that, yes, we understand that this is a lose-lose situation for us. If you destroy the ring, our rings will lose all power. If he gets the ring, then he will take power over us. So anyway, to answer, that was a very long-winded, like non-answer of what exactly like do these rings do. Well, the other thing is that I guess, so I'm imagining that the one ring is kind of like a Horcrux, like how in Deathly Hallows, when they have the locket Horcrux, when they're wearing it, they feel the effects of it in a really negative way, and they can feel it kind of eating on their soul and just making them the worst versions of themselves. And I guess it's kind of the same thing with the ring and the way... Ooh, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, write this thought down. So then when we come to it, I will bring it up again. Okay, cool. But yeah, so that was such a long-winded answer of like, I don't know exactly what the rings do. I think the elvish rings are good and the one ring is bad. I feel like I asked a lot of these similar questions when I was doing the episode on chapter 2, like in book 1, of like where exactly did these rings come from? Who made them? What did they do? And I think I was told that either this is like Silmarillion stuff that gets covered there, or this is stuff that just gets touched on later, or it's just stuff that we never learn. So there are no answers currently.
Since we were talking about elves a little bit, I know your white whale is trying to figure out how the elves age.
Yes.
So in preparation, I thought I would do some basic internet search to see what I could find out about this to try and help you out. So this is what I found on TolkienGateway.net. Apparently, in the first year, elves can learn to walk, talk, and dance. They mature much faster mentally than physically, and when they're about 20 years old, they look to be about 7 years old physically, but they still have the mental capacity or whatever maturity of a 20-year-old.
20-year-old.
And then their puberty is at 50, so kind of late bloomers there. And then at 100 years old is when they're fully grown, and they don't age after that.
Okay. So they just age super slowly until they get to the age of 100, and then they just stop aging. Yeah. Okay.
Like I think 100 would look like a 35-year-old.
Okay.
And then they say the only way that they can like age after that is in cases of extreme stress or sorrow. And they use an example of someone who I didn't know, but they say that he physically looked older because of the amount of stress that he was carrying made him look older. Also, I was curious how they die if they don't die, you know, in a battle or something. Apparently they just choose when they want to like leave this world and go on to the next one. So they're just like, 900 years, I guess that's enough. I'll just go on to Valinor. I don't know where that is or what that is, but it's where they go to after this world. So
nice.
As far as I could tell. So
this is all very helpful, and I appreciate this so much because as demonstrated by the fact that I was literally Google searching where to find the cartoon version of Lord of the Rings, and I found out that Boromir died. I literally cannot Google anything relating to this series. So thank you for being my like spoiler buffer.
You just need somebody else to do your Googling for you. That way they can fill out all the...
Oh, actually, well, Tyler and Ethan were asking me, is there anything that like any kind of equipment that you need, or do you need to upgrade anything? And I did comment. I was like, well, actually, turning my microphone in the correct direction made a huge difference. But now that I'm thinking about it, an assistant to Google things for me would be great. So that's in the Bacon and Eggs Network budget. I'd appreciate that. Thanks. So, Chapter 9, The Great River. Basically, they go down a river. Gollum is following them. They meet some rapids. There are some orcs. The end. Like nothing happens in this chapter.
I literally felt like this chapter could have been 2 sentences long. As they left Lorien, they made their way down the Great River, and Gollum followed them. Yeah, that's it.
Perfect.
End of chapter.
There you go. Like they had some run-ins with a couple orcs.
Yeah, there was so many times that I thought, this is gonna get exciting. But then it's just like, nope, not quite.
And it's like I was saying earlier, I was so excited to read this chapter because I was like, oh man, Shire is going to go down. And then nothing happened. Nope. And then also now that I've finally made the connection that the breaking of the fellowship means that they're probably going to split in their separate directions, that also means that chapter 10 probably isn't going to be that exciting either. And I am very disappointed by this because I was like, oh my gosh, there's going to be some huge drama. They're going to break up. It's going to be like the Beatles. Who's going to be Yoko?
It's been so long since I've read them that I can't separate like the Two Towers and the end of the Fellowship in my mind. So I don't want to say what I think happens in the next chapter. So I'll just keep my mouth shut there. So. And
also, I have seen the first movie, and I remember that the first movie ends with like Merry and Pippin being taken off, I think, by some enemy of some kind. And then, I'm sorry. I'm looking out my window. I swear to God, I just saw red beady eyes staring at me. What?
Was it in the shape of a log?
that's extra creepy. Okay, now I'm really creeped out. I also live on the 3rd floor of an apartment, so there's no way anyone could be standing outside. I swear I saw something.
Slender Man's outside the window.
Oh my God, no. Also, I'm alone tonight because my roommate is working nights tonight. So, anywho, what was I saying? So I know that the movie ends with like Frodo's trying to run off and do this on his own, and then Sam is like, wait for me, and then they go off together. And one of my friends, we were talking about whether or not she was asking me if I was going to be reading the books, all of the books, and then do all the movies, or if I would do the book and then do the movie. And I was originally like, that would make sense because then the book would be really fresh in my mind. Then she said, actually, wait, I wouldn't do that because the end of Fellowship, the movie, actually kind of goes into what the beginning of Two Towers is. Yeah. And I don't know like how exactly I'm going to cover the movies on the podcast because I don't know how, like, I don't think it's going to be very good content for me to be like, they left this line out. They kept this line in. Isn't that great? Like, wow, they really nailed the physical description of Gandalf. That was awesome. And I don't want to rag on the movie.
Let's do it. Let's rag on the movie. Come on, Peter Jackson. Why couldn't you create a 400-page book in a movie edition better?
I know. I will be excited to see, like, so these movies came out in 2001. Do these movies still hold up 18 years later?
Nope.
Are the Balrog or whatever it was that kills Gandalf, like, that's got to be some huge CGI thing at least. Or maybe it's Benedict Cumberbatch in a mocap suit. Who knows? One or the other. That's my new theory. Every CGI character is just Benedict Cumberbatch in a mocap suit. Also, from what I understand, he did not have to do that. Like, I think asked them, like, so what are you gonna do? And I think he like proposed this idea of, what if I do like a movement piece for you guys to base the animation on, and it went from there.
It's so like I'm sure you have just watched the YouTube videos of just like him like crawling around on like a green floor and background, and his facial contortions are ridiculous. I'm like, he knows he's not actually a dragon, right? Okay.
Oh my God, it's literally just his voice, and I'm like, that's it. That's the man I want to marry. Benedict Cumberbatch in the mocap suit.
Oh, specifically in the mocap suit.
Yeah, the mocap.
Not just Benedict Cumberbatch. It's just him
doing his voice. Doing the Smaug voice. Oh my gosh.
At your wedding, he's going to have a veil and remove it, and it's his mocap suit underneath.
Oh my gosh. Well, it does have the word suit in it, so I think that works. It's like, wear your best suit for the wedding. Oh my gosh. So what happens in this chapter?
I don't think anything.
So, man, 30 minutes in, we're talking about what happens in this chapter. So they're going down the Great River, and basically they're going by the plan of long travel days, and they will get up early and just go down the river. Sometimes they paddle, sometimes they just let the current take them, and then they go into the night as long as they can, and then they stop on the banks and rest, and then get up in the morning and do it again. And it's like that for a couple days. At one point, they start going through this land that clearly has been like something happened here. And what it is ain't exactly clear. And there's a man with a gun over there.
With a gun over there. What's he tell you?
I'm saying, stop, baby. Anyway. But yeah, Frodo's saying like, something happened here, but I don't even want to imagine it because it had to have been bad because it looks desolate. And
I think they don't really say what happened, but I'm pretty sure someone came in and they chopped down all the trees and took all the truffula trees and put all them and made them into a what's that thing called?
It's oh God, what are they called? The barbaloot. No, those are the bears.
Man,
Thneed. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Thneed. Wow.
Yes, so they came in, someone made a bunch of thneeds, and they just...
Well, and honestly, if you've ever read the Lorax or seen any of the movies, the Danny DeVito version is my preferred medium of the Lorax. For sure. How it looks at the end with it being like smog and desolate wasteland, I'm assuming is not that different from, well, actually, so what I'm imagining is, because Frodo says like off to the west it looked beautiful, and off to the east, so they're literally just like going down the river, and like one side is black, it's scorched, there are no trees, the sky is cloudy and smoggy, and then you look over on the other side of the river and it's like trees, butterflies, ponies are prancing around in the pasture. Yeah, exactly. So
Bill the pony's over there prancing around.
Oh, Bill. I hope he's living his best life. Oh man, I've not thought about Bill the pony in a minute. It's been a minute. I hope he's doing
never
okay.
Forget Bill the pony.
I hope he's doing I hope he's living his best life. I mean but anyway, so this is just kind of a reminder and a sign that they are getting closer to the danger, where they're now seeing physical signs of the evil touching the land. Let's see. And then there's something about black swans flying and swimming nearby. And I was like, well, black swans have to be some kind of ominous symbolism.
Yeah, it's like a bad omen.
Yeah, but at the time I was almost falling asleep because I was so tired. So we're going to Google search this now, black swan symbolism, because I think my reasoning at the time was like, well, I mean, just based on my knowledge of the film Black Swan, I'm assuming it's not good. Wait, what? It says symbolizes the protective power of romance, the joy and freedom felt in helping others as well as equality. What? Oh, wait, no, here we go. I look up
Black Swan, an unpredictable or unforeseen event, typically one with extreme consequences.
Ooh, okay. Well, there we go. Let's see. In an Aboriginal folklore, there's a story of a group of women who are the only people who know the secret to making boomerangs. They refuse to share the secret, so a band of men decide to steal the boomerangs from them. Two of the men turn to white swans and land on a nearby lake. The women rush to the shore to view the beautiful birds, and the rest of the men slip into the camp to attain the goods. Discovering they have been duped, the women grow furious and chase the swans off the lake. The swans go to a neighboring lake where a pair of eagles live. What the?
Oh, just like in the book, when isn't there some huge eagle that joins the black swans?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Later in the chapter, they make note that a huge eagle is flying ahead, and basically it was either Aragorn or Frodo or someone was like, well, that can't be good.
Yeah. So Tolkien was a fan of Australian folklore, we just learned.
A flock of crows wanting to spite their enemies, the eagles, offer their black feathers for the swans' new coats, and the swans are saved. Meanwhile, the women continue on bickering for eternity over who's to blame for the incident. Well, that sounds sexist.
Eternity.
Literally bickering for eternity over who's to blame for the incident. What? Also, what happened to the boomerangs? I'm invested now.
It was like a toy that like the girls had and the boys wanted, you know? They like saw them playing with this toy. All the boys had was like sticks that don't come back. They're like, we want sticks to come back.
They've just been throwing sticks around waiting for them to go. What on earth? This is, listeners, this is from wildgratitude.com/swan-symbolism. So there you go. Oh, that's a great story. Anyway. Where is that? Oh, so they're basically also just kind of, everyone's just sitting in their boats, kind of just quietly thinking to themselves because no one is talking. I guess I don't know if they've made the decision collectively that they don't want to talk to be quiet. If that's like a strategy plan. Or if they...
I think Boromir was probably kept talking about how they should use the ring, and people just like kept shushing him.
And Aragorn's like, hey, let's play the quiet game.
Yeah, exactly.
Boromir was the equivalent of me as a child whenever playing the quiet game, to sit there for 5 seconds and be like, I lose. Darn. Like anyway, back to...
This seems like the part where they would sing songs normally, you know?
Ooh, so I guess that's a sign of the times that like...
Yeah.
It's so grim that they're not even singing.
Wow.
Yeah, they're all just sitting silently thinking, because the other thing is they're not always even paddling the boats because the current is just carrying them. So for the majority of these traveling days, they're just sitting there thinking quietly to themselves, which is my nightmare. And it says, the heart of Legolas was running under the stars of a summer night in some northern glade amid the beech woods. And I don't know why, but this statement just made me realize that I am always just imagining oh my God, wait. That's it. Oh my God. Freudian slip if I ever... Okay. This is going to be the most obscure reference. And some people listening will be like, yeah, I totally understand. So in my head, whenever they're talking about Legolas, I'm always imagining him just like prancing around. And I almost just now said Lucius, because in a Harry Potter sequel, the musical sequel to a Harry Potter musical, they have Lucius. His character is that he's always dancing around and he's just like doing these really dramatic entrances and is always like doing spins and pirouettes. And he has this awful long blonde wig. And that's exactly what I'm imagining of Legolas is him just prancing around doing whatever he pleases. Yeah. Anyway, so then it says after this, Merry and Pippin in the middle boat were ill at ease, for Boromir sat muttering to himself, sometimes biting his nails, as if some restlessness or doubt consumed him, sometimes seizing a paddle and driving the boat close behind Aragorn's. So this is what earlier when we were talking, I was like, oh, I'm going to write this down so we can talk about it when we get there. Kind of how I was talking, how the ring reminds me of the Horcrux in Deathly Hallows. This part where Aragorn is in the boat, like muttering to himself, and like every now and then he'll paddle up really close so he's right next to Aragorn's boat.
Yeah.
I mean, Boromir. I don't know who I said. There's 10 of them. There's a lot of characters in these books. I just called Legolas Lucius. It's fine. We all get it.
Yeah.
Anyway, talking about how he's sitting there, like muttering to himself, reminds me of in Deathly Hallows movie when it's like a montage showing the trio camping and walking around and taking turns wearing the Horcrux. And there's this one scene where Harry and Hermione stop for a second and Hermione gives Harry a water bottle and Ron is a couple feet behind them and he's like just glaring at them. Yeah. And he has this dark look on his... That's kind of what I'm imagining is Boromir's just giving Aragorn's boat dirty looks and he's like, as the leader of this fellowship, we'd be doing things different.
I'd be wearing my gold belt and Minas Tirith right now.
And Merry and Pippin are just sitting there like, okay, what are we going to do about this? What a fun boat ride.
Seriously, they really struck out on that one.
I called it in the previous episode when it mentioned that Boromir, Merry, and Pippin were the next group in the boat. I was like, oh, that's definitely the boat to watch. Like, that's the one we're going to have to keep a close eye on.
Yeah.
And then I also like this note at the end of this section. They're talking about how every now and then they'll want to move faster down the river, so they'll start paddling. And it says, even when the paddles were in use, they did not trust Sam with one. So I like that they won't let Sam paddle. That's just classic, just one-liner digs.
I must have missed
Tolkien.
that. Why aren't they letting Sam paddle? He hates water or something?
I think
is that it?
It's because Sam is just a total wimp and he's still annoying, but everyone wants me to love him, so whatever.
I guess.
No, Sam is just like the epitome of what a hobbit is, where he's like, everything is terrifying, everything is new, this is not natural. Hobbits don't like water, as we learned in one of the earlier chapters, that there's one family, I think it was the Brandybucks maybe, who do live near the water and are more acclimated to the water because they use boats. And the other hobbits are like, no, those are the queer folk because they use boats and they know how to navigate the water and they know how to swim. So
that makes
Sam
sense.
is not one of these hobbits. So it says he was cramped and miserable, having nothing to do but stare at the winter lands crawling by and the gray water on either side of him. So he's just not having a great time. I mean, no one is, but especially Sam. But It's just once again like those classic quick little one-liners that really do a lot to add character or remind you of something about a certain character. I just really
like if he wouldn't have mentioned this, I would have almost forgot that Sam was even there.
I mean, he does have that quality about him. As Sam, since he can't paddle the boat and all he can do is sit there and stare and look around, he notices that there is a log behind him. And he imagines once or twice that he sees a pair of eyes on the log, and he's like, that's not right, whatever. And then later that night, he brings it up to Frodo and says, just then I saw the eyes, two pale sort of points, shiny like, on a hump at the near end of the log. What's more, it wasn't a log, for it had paddle feet, almost a swan's, only they seemed bigger and kept dipping in and out of the water. So it's at this point that I'm like, okay, obviously this is Gollum, as I've been calling this entire second half of the book. Whenever they mention eyes glowing in the dark, I'm like, it's Gollum. It's gotta be. And then the next page, Frodo's like, yes, I thought I saw that too, and my fears are that it's Gollum. And this is the first time that they say out loud, yes, I think that's Gollum. And I was like, I knew it. It's got to be him.
Tolkien's just like been teasing us this whole time with Gollum. It's just like this constant, like, we think there's something back there, but it's like never confirmed. And finally in this chapter, okay, yes, it is actually Gollum.
Gollum, yeah. And later they bring it up to Aragorn. They're like, hey, just an FYI, I'd be on the lookout for a log with eyes. We think Gollum is following us. And Aragorn's like, oh yeah, I know. He's been following us since Moria. And I'm like, Aragorn, why would you not say anything about this? Has everyone in the Fellowship known all along? Have they known the entire time that Gollum has been following them and no one is just saying anything about this? It's the Gollum in the room, so to speak. Like no one wants to...
It's like, it's like he probably didn't want Frodo and Sam freaking out just like they did in this chapter where like they couldn't sleep and they had to like stay up and watch each other because they were afraid they were going to get strangled or something in their sleep.
Yeah, everyone's like, okay... it's now, I guess, shared with the whole group that Gollum is following them because they decide to move faster the next day to try and lose track of Gollum, and they just spend the whole day paddling. And this is when they see, later as the sun was setting and the company was stirring and getting ready to start again, so I guess this is the next morning after they rested. Let's see, that's not a word. Descried? D-E-S-C-R-I-E-D.
Maybe it's
something.
Maybe it's
it looks like,
typo.
Is that a typo? Because it does. I'm
trying to see what mine says here.
What is that? That's not a describe. Google search it. See, this is what I need an assistant for. Okay, there we go. Descry means to catch sight of. So there you go, Tolkien. How dare you use words?
So something I thought of, again, reading Tolkien, was he uses words like that and other words, like crazy words I've never heard of before, but usually can figure out the meaning from the context. But like if I was writing a story, what I would do, what I have done is just like write a paragraph and then like, okay, I need to make this more interesting, and you highlight a word and like search the thesaurus or whatever for like another word similar to it. But Tolkien didn't have that. How did he just know these words?
His brain, his insane brain. Like, so one of my friends and also previous guest, Neil Metcalf, was texting me some similar stuff about what you were talking about with the elves. The way you described it, you put it much more succinctly than Neil did, because Neil loves Lord of the Rings. He loves the history. So he was going into great detail about like the elves and how they're created and like paragraph long text about all this. And I like, my only response to it was like, Tolkien was Shire insane. Like, and Neil said, yeah, he was a suffering World War I veteran, and it's just madness.
I feel like if you met him in person, you like wouldn't be able to communicate or socialize normally with him because his mind is obviously way far away from anything close to reality. Like the amount of time and like stuff that he puts into this story is absolutely ridiculous with the history and like as a Star Wars fan, I appreciate all the like Star Wars stuff going way back, and I spend way too much time on Wikipedia and it's just like I'm amazed at all this. But then you get into Lord of the Rings and it's just like boundless, even more than what Star Wars ever was, and this all came from one man. You know what I mean? It's like ridiculous.
Yeah, man. Poor Tolkien. Anyway, all that being said, Legolas spots an eagle in the sky and is like, that's probably not good because the eagles are not supposed to be in this part of the land. And then Aragorn just says ominously, "We will not start until it is fully dark." And then, or wait, no, is this one?
We're starting to get into the territory that Aragorn doesn't know.
Yes, yeah. Aragorn says, once we move forward from here, we're in unknown land to me, essentially. So once again, just like another, just kind of just like piling on things of like, well, that's not good. So, and then because then this is where they start going down the river and they realize that they're heading towards the rapids. So they have to, and it's nighttime and there's no way, they said it would be hard enough for us to do the rapids in the daytime. It's nighttime. Let's turn around. So they turn around and start heading back. And this is when I was like, oh, this is the action that's going to happen.
Exactly.
Basically, so they have the rapids on one side of them. And then on the other side, orcs start coming to get them. Or I guess they're on the land. I don't know. They're firing arrows at them. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. It's like stuck between a rock and a hard place, stuck between rapids and orcs. Like, this is great. And then, Legolas just has to come in with his cool new magic bow from Lothlorien.
What was that noise you just made?
I might have cleared my throat. I
think you went, ugh, which I think is exactly how you say orc in Elvish. Judging by my book here.
Oh yeah, YRC. Yeah. Yeah.
I didn't know if you were speaking Elvish there for a second.
I just like how the Elvish word for orc is very much how that makes sense because it sounds like the sound that you would make if you saw an orc. Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah. Yark. Oh gosh. Yeah, so the orcs are coming for him and they get over on the shore and Legolas pulls out his handy dandy bow and the new beautiful bow that he got in Lothlorien as the gift from Galadriel. And he says some magic words that I don't know what they mean. Elbereth Gilthoniel. Sure. Elbereth Gilthoniel. Sounds great. Shoots an arrow, I think, either across the shore to the other side where the orcs are. I was a little unclear if the orcs are like in the river coming towards them, if they're on the same side.
I think the orcs are on the land. Okay. I don't think they're in the river. I don't know if they even see the orcs. They're just like seeing arrows and Legolas yells orc.
Yeah. And yeah, because it's so dark, they probably can't even see them.
Yeah.
So I guess, I don't know, maybe Legolas saw them or something. But anyway, it says, suddenly the great bow of Lorien sang, shrill went the arrow from the elven string. Frodo looked up. Almost above him, the winged shape swerved. There was a harsh croaking scream as if it fell out of the air, vanishing down into the gloom of the eastern shore. The sky was clean. So the single arrow from Legolas saves them all. So I hope we got more of those.
I think Legolas got super lucky here because I made a note of this that it says, Elbereth Gilthoniel sighed Legolas as he looked up. Even as he did so, a dark shape like a cloud, and yet it not a cloud, for it moved far more swiftly, came out of the blackness. And this is after he shot the arrow, isn't it?
Wait, no, this is...
Oh, no. You're right. It says, suddenly the great bow of Lorien sang.
Yeah, so I guess he was preparing to shoot the arrow, and then this...
and then he saw it. Yeah.
Figure shows up and is, let's see, it says like a cloud and yet not a cloud. So I'm assuming that's not an orc. Because I'm assuming if it was an orc, they would have been like, an orc came for them.
I still think he got lucky because he just shot into the cloud, but not a cloud.
Oh, yeah.
And it fell from the sky. So that's...
Maybe the magic words were like, Galadriel, guide my arrow for our protection or something. And then Galadriel's magic or something or the magic that was because I think the bow, it said, was made from the wood of like the trees in Lothlorien, or maybe the hair of it.
Yeah, it was strung by elvish hair, I think.
Yeah, something to do with hair, which just sounds creepy.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm sure it just has like some remnants of magic from Lothlorien in it that make it a much better bow than any other bow. So, which is good for them because Legolas saves the day. And then this is when they are deciding what to do because the rapids are there. And they say, okay, tomorrow some of us will go and look for a way. And then they start talking about how long they were in Lorien for. And I just love how they have no idea how long it was. They were noting that, when we were in Lorien, when we were in there, we were just getting a new moon. Something with the moon and it wasn't aligning right. And then Legolas explains, sort of, for the elves, the world moves, and it moves both very swift and very slow. Swift because they themselves change little and all else fleets by. It is a grief to them. Slow because they need not count the running years, not for themselves. The passing seasons are but ripples ever repeated in the long, long stream. Yet beneath the sun, all things must wear to an end at last. So I just appreciated this because I was like, okay, great. This is some, explanation of how the elves experience time, which is now that I'm thinking about it, a very elfish answer, which is a non-answer of like, well, it moves slowly and fastly. And it's like, thanks, Legolas. But point being that the elves do not experience time the way that the humans or the hobbits or whoever else experiences time. And then Frodo is like, rich are the hours, though short they seem, in Caras Galathon, where Galadriel wields the elven ring. And then Aragorn goes, that should not have been said outside Lorien, not even to me. Speak no more of it. So
we'll play the quiet game again.
Yeah. Aragorn's just like, oh my God, you cannot keep a secret. Like, Galadriel has one of the most powerful rings. Let's not shout it into the universe. Like,
yeah, they were literally orcs just here.
Just
like
there.
5 seconds ago.
They're like on their way to Mordor. There have been all these ominous signs that, Sauron or evil in general has been near here. Let's just shut up about the rings for a hot sec. Oh, Frodo. Then, so they wake up the next morning and it's foggy and they're like, we're not going to be able to navigate the rapids in this fog. Let's figure out what to do. And this is just kind of the ongoing conversation that hasn't really been addressed since the previous chapter of what they're going to do or where they're going to go. And Boromir is saying, well, if we go this way, we'll end up very conveniently entering my land. And Aragorn's like, well, yeah, we can do that if we're going for Minas Tirith, but we're not doing that, right, Boromir? And Boromir's like, I don't know, maybe.
I guess we'll wait and see.
Oh my gosh. So Boromir's
he just won't let it go.
And it's just kind of, there's a lot of small hints in this chapter that clearly he's becoming, I don't know if resentful. I don't think resentful is the right word, but my impression is that he doesn't like how Aragorn is leading the group because he wants the group to go to Minas Tirith, and Aragorn is most likely not going to do that. And so that kind of goes back to when he was like staring in the boat, muttering to himself, and then he would like quickly paddle up and try and catch up to Aragorn.
What was he gonna do when he paddled up? He like
I don't know.
I'm gonna sneak up behind him. Like, what are you gonna do?
I guess that's just his way of like proving himself. Like, see, I can be a leader too.
He just like paddles like barely in front of Aragorn's boat.
He's like, I'm in first place, so I'm the leader now.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of like Boromir thinking he knows what's best, and again, it's the pride and the arrogance of mankind to think that we are going to be able to take this ring and use it, and he really wants to take it to his homeland and use the ring. When Aragorn knows it needs to go to Mordor, but he doesn't know how to best take it there. And Aragorn's like sole purpose, I think, is to protect Frodo, as Frodo needs to go to Mordor. Whereas Boromir's like, no, let's take it from Frodo, and someone else can use it better or do something with it better than Frodo. Where Aragorn's like, no, Frodo is keeping the ring. We just got to figure out how we're going to get him to where it needs to be destroyed.
And that was kind of the thing that Aragorn was grappling with in the previous chapter when Celeborn is like, so what's happening? What's the plan? Where are you going? Because up until Gandalf died, Aragorn was pretty sure that he was going to return to like take his rightful place at his throne or whatever. Or it was like he was going to go with Boromir to Minas Tirith or something. But now that Gandalf is dead, he couldn't imagine leaving the hobbits to Mordor by themselves. So obviously he's going to go with them to Mordor, and kind of grappling with this idea that whatever, prophecy or what's the fate is awaiting him and his legacy, it's just going to have to hold on a little bit longer, or not at all, because he might die. Yeah. Who knows? Boromir dies, but I don't know about Aragorn. Anyway, so Aragorn and Legolas the next morning go ahead. Yeah, so they go ahead and find a path for them to take the boats around the rapids, basically. And they come back and Aragorn's like, okay, we're going to go this way. Boromir basically says like, no, that's not a good way to go. If you go forward, peril will grow with every mile, even if you find a path. Peril lies ahead on every southward road, answered Aragorn. So Boromir's like, that's not a good way to go. It's pretty dangerous. And Aragorn's like, we're literally on the way to Mordor. Everything is dangerous right now.
Yeah, like Boromir, do you even know the point of this trip?
Like everything, we could all die around every single corner, especially you, Boromir. Who knows?
Any second now, it could happen to any one of us at any second.
Yeah. Boromir. And so they pick up the boats and they take this path, and Gimli says basically like, well, I'm not going to be of much help because I have tiny legs and I'm not going to be able to carry the boat. So y'all have fun. I'll just walk. And after they carry the boats and their bags and stuff and they get there, they stop. They stop, and Boromir notes that everyone's exhausted and tired. And he says, we are all too tired, except, no doubt, our sturdy dwarf. And it was at this point that I'm like, okay, Boromir, I get why you die. Like I get every now and then I'll just remember like, oh my God, I can't believe I learned that Boromir dies. That's such a bummer. Oh man, I feel so bad. And like all the mean things I've said about him, I feel so bad for how I've treated him. Maybe I should change my... No. He's annoying me so much in this chapter.
I wrote down a quote from him before they were talking about carrying the boats, this portage or whatever they called it, and they're discussing should we do it or not, and Boromir literally says that would not be easy even if we all were men. It's like there's only two men, right? He's just like, you're surrounded by people who aren't agreeing with you. Like you might want to like be a little cautious of how you talk because someone might just push you in front of an arrow or something. So it's like he said, even if we were all men, like, it would be hard. And I'm traveling with children and dwarves. It's just
oops, my arrow. The wind blew it that way. Weird.
Accidentally pushed you into the river. Sorry, Boromir.
So weird. Then they get back in the river and they see. I wasn't sure. I'm assuming it means in the distance, or they will soon be there and they're approaching it. But they are approaching Argonath. Behold the Argonath, the pillars of the kings, cried Aragorn. We shall pass them soon. So I guess they are approaching it. It's these two giant statues that I've seen a dozen interpretations of in fan art or pictures of, or just stuff like that. So I'm like, oh, that's what this thing is. Great. So it's these two
giant statues singing "Stop in the Name of Love" is what they're doing.
They're holding out their hands, I think is what it's described. The left hand of each was raised, palm outwards, in a gesturing of warning. In each right hand there was an axe. Upon each head there was a crumbling helm and crown. Yeah, so they're holding out their hands. Stop in the name of love. Yeah. And then Aragorn gives this very, like, I don't know if it's ominous. I don't know if epic is the right word, but he says, "Fear not," said a strange voice behind him. Frodo turned and saw Strider, and yet not Strider, for the weather-worn ranger was no longer there. In the stern sat Aragorn, son of Arathorn, proud and erect, guiding the boat with skillful strokes. His hood was cast back, and his dark hair was I liked this detail. His dark hair was blowing in the wind. A light was in his eyes. A king returning from exile to his own land. "Fear not," he said. "Long have I desired to look upon the likenesses of Isildur and Anarion." No one come for me if I said that wrong. "My sires of old. Under the shadow, Elisar, the Elfstone, son of Arathorn." This is just also a lot of names. "Under their shadow, Elsar, the Elfstone, son of Arathorn, of the house of Valendil, Isildur's son, heir of Elendil, has naught to dread." So many names.
He could have just said "fear not." Like,
two,
why? Like,
3,
seriously?
4 names in one sentence. So I'm confused.
Well, it's interesting that he calls him Strider in this. It's the only time in this entire chapter, and I think previous chapters. When's the last time they called him Strider? It's been a while.
I know. I think probably since the Council of Elrond, because that's when it's the big, like, quote unquote reveal. That's not really a reveal, that Strider is Aragorn, son of Arathorn, and, you know, fated to return to the throne.
Heir to the throne of
restore.
Gondor.
Yes. So, yeah, he hasn't been called. And I remember when he was introduced, it's noted that his real name is Aragorn, but Frodo continues calling him Strider for a long time. So I was like, I wonder when they're going to start calling him Aragorn, and whether or not that's going to be like a big thing to notice, or something like a note of importance of like when they switch from calling him Strider to Aragorn. But here it's definitely it carries a lot of meaning behind it, because Strider is the grizzled ranger who is, you know, going around not using his real name, his esteemed name, Aragorn, son of Arathorn. Strider has no connection to Gondor or anything like that. So for Frodo to suddenly realize, like, oh wow, this is a king returning to his throne, and also seeing that in Aragorn, seeing him be proud to be returning. So
it's like that part in like all the like teen romantic comedies where like the girl takes off her glasses and takes out her ponytail and oh, she's been beautiful the whole time. You know what I mean? It's like
that's exactly what Aragorn has just been wearing his hood the whole time, and then he takes his hood off and Frodo's like, oh my god, he's been hot.
He definitely like took a picture and posted it on Instagram, hashtag #ManCrushMonday.
Felt cute, might delete later.
Feeling royal, might delete later.
Gosh, what were we talking about? Oh yeah, so my confusion is, so where is this famed throne that Aragorn will be returning to? Because the way that Aragorn meets or looks at these statues is like, oh, I'm home, I'm here to return. It's like, we're here, this is where it's gonna go down for my future and story, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know. Are the statues just like an entrance into his land?
From what I understand, and I'm sure there's a good chance I might be wrong, but this is like the entrance to Rohan, I think.
See, that's what I just get so confused, because they also just name drop a lot of places. Because the other one that they mention or bring up is Imyan Mul, which are the mountains.
Yeah.
And they are, okay, so they are just north of Wetwang.
Don't laugh. This is serious.
Very serious business. Nindalf. Yeah, so they're just north of Nindalf. I guess this is the point where because this chapter basically ends with like, it's decision time, because we can no longer go by boat. The group sees that the Falls of Raros are up ahead, and they get offshore, and the chapter ends with a huge tone of uncertainty. Yeah. The 10th day of their journey was over. Wilder land was behind them. They could go no further without choice between the East Way and the West. The last stage of the quest was before them. Ooh.
Going back to the maps, which is great to listen to, but like they are at the point where if they go west, they go to Rohan and Gondor. If they go east, they go to Mordor. So I mean, I think it's pretty clear they should just go to Mordor because that's where it needs to go, but Boromir has other plans. I was
going to say, as evidenced by the title of the next chapter, that's not what happens. So.
Oh, one more thing here, having to do with the maps. I thought it would just be interesting because my map has a little thing. It's like, oh, this far is 200 miles or whatever, you know? So it's like, I wonder how far they've gone. And so I measured it out, and this is just using straight lines from like the Shire to Bree to Rivendell to wherever, each spot that they've gone to. And by my calculations, they have gone about 550 miles.
You could say they've walked 500 miles. You could say they're going to walk 500 more.
What?
You know, just to be the man.
But it's only 200 miles from where they are currently at to actual Mount Doom. So they are closer than when they started, that's for sure.
That being said, there's just the pesky question of how do they get into Mordor, because we know that you can't simply walk into it. So I guess that's the question of the ages, is like, how do we get there?
One does not simply not die in this story.
I know. Yeah, because it's not exactly a straight path it could be a straight path into Mordor, because when you look at the map, Mordor is like surrounded by these mountains that are in a square almost. These mountains completely block Mordor off, and except for there's this one little passageway that clearly is the only way to easily enter Mordor. But I'm assuming that's not the way that they can go. So it's just going to have to, I don't know, Eagles! Fly the eagles. Aren't they
black
huge?
Swans.
Fly the swans.
Legolas can jump on one of those black swans and just use one of his magic arrows and just like shoot it into Mount Doom.
I'm honestly expecting at some point for Legolas to like take out a vial and it has like elf dust in it, and he's like, oh, didn't I tell you this is like our elf magic, and I've been saving it for very dire circumstances, and here we are. So I'm gonna just dust it over our little canoes here, and then we're gonna fly over the mountains into Mordor. Like I'm sure that's gotta happen. It's like some kind of BS where the elf magic is just a plot hole covering for so much. So I'm expecting that again in the future for Legolas to be like, well, haven't I told you? Well, that brings us to the end of chapter 9. Mm-hmm. Now all that's left is chapter 10. And now we'll see what happens. My assumption is that Boromir is going to be the Yoko Ono, and they're going to fight, and Boromir's going to be like, well, I'm going to Minas Tirith. Y'all have fun.
See ya.
Call me when you get there. And when that pesky ring is destroyed, you can come visit me. So hope you survive. Bye. We'll see. Oh, Boromir. Yeah, well, that's the other thing is if he's like, I'm going to Minas Tirith, I'm assuming he's going alone. So that does not bode well for him.
I feel like he thinks that they're just going to be like, okay, Boromir, we'll go do your thing, and then it's back to our thing.
It's like, I guess it's kind of like when you try and fake someone out to be like, okay, I'm leaving now.
Right,
like,
right.
Okay, bye, have fun.
Yeah,
no, really, I'm leaving. My hand is on the door now. Okay, have fun. See you later. I'm out the door.
I'm 3 miles down the road.
Yeah. You still have time if you want to follow me, if you want to come with.
We have to do that to our kids all the time when we're like, they never want to go home. They just want to be like wherever they're at. And we're like, okay, we're leaving. And we have to actually like physically walk out the door before like, ah!
Yeah, my parent, like my mom especially, she definitely didn't pretend to, like, she would leave and then I would be sitting there in the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese, like crying, being like, my mom left me. And then I would walk outside and she would literally be just standing there being like, it's about time. So, well, do you have any stray thoughts or observations or feelings that we didn't get to touch on?
I wouldn't say this is directly related to this chapter, but at the beginning of your episodes, you have this like folky type of music playing. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be more appropriate to have Lil Jon's Turn Down for What as the episode starts. Seeing as that is your Instagram handle, Twitter handle. I'm not sure.
It is my Instagram handle. Yes, thank you very much.
I just want like the little like pan flute to come in and then just hear the turn down for what.
Well, Tyler's original idea. So this is such a specific reference for people who listen to Hamilton. I think it's Satisfied. It's the beginning, the very beginning of Satisfied. They're doing the toasts at the wedding for Eliza and what's his name? Alexander Hamilton. And
I'm not even close to tracking with you. Because I've never listened to any of it.
Don't worry. And like someone finishes giving a toast and then John Lawrence goes, all right, that's what I'm talking about. But the way he says talking kind of sounds like Tolkien, but not really.
Yeah.
And Tyler like wanted me to use that sound clip of like,
all right, that's what I'm talking about.
Well, what would you like to share with our audience? Where can people find you on the internet?
I am on Twitter and Instagram at Sorta Star Wars, and it's at Sorta Star Wars because I do have a podcast of my own called Sorta Star Wars Podcast, and we talk about mostly Star Wars, but other stuff too, parenting and stuff like that. And I actually just started a new podcast a couple weeks ago all about Fast and the Furious.
Oh, cool.
That's called Granny Shifting, so you can check that one out too. It's where we take the Fast and Furious movies and break and do 1 minute of movie at a time. So, and talk about it.
It's so funny you say that because literally just today, I not really, but kind of jokingly pitched. Also, like, I should preface this episode, but I'm prefacing it too lately because the preface goes at the beginning, hence the prefix pre. Yeah. Anyway, I should explain that normally my instinct would be to pair chapter 9 with something else because, like I said, not that much happened. But Tyler and Ethan and I have been like, wow, this Lord of the Rings train is going a little faster than we thought. Definitely thought it would take a lot longer. And so now we're definitely sticking to just doing one chapter per episode. Anyway, and so like there's just always kind of this looming question of what happens after I finish the books, I finish the movies, all that. And I was saying, I mean, like if we want to continue this trend of I do huge fantasy series that I know nothing about, I could do Star Wars because I have not seen a single movie. And then I was like, except every episode just covers 1 minute of each movie.
Believe it or not, that podcast does exist already. Yeah, it's called Star Wars Minute, and they watch 1 minute of Star Wars and talk about it.
Well, my problem would be that, like, I'm not a film person, so I would be the absolute worst person to do a minute by minute discussion. I would be like, that was a great minute. Okay, thanks for coming on the show.
You wouldn't believe how hard it is to stop after watching 1 minute. You're like, oh, that's a minute. That's it. So many times we're like, watch like a couple seconds pass. We're like, oh, shoot. But yeah, it's hard to just watch 1 minute of a movie.
I just wouldn't be good
it's fun.
It. Anyway, and then we were also tossing around like dumb names for it too. Like, I was like, who made Star Wars? And they said George Lucas. And I said, that's what I'm Lucas about. Like, and then I said Star Wars, but I talk about it in the voice of Wario. So it's Star Wario.
What? Can you please tell me how Wario talks right now?
Wario. Anyway, that's what I'm talking about is a production of Bacon and Eggs. What do I say here? That's what I'm talking about, is a production of Bacon and Eggs. You can learn more about them by going to baconandeggs.media. The cover is by Graphite. Support him on Instagram at graphite.vmb. You can find me on Twitter at mcwatt416 and Instagram, like we mentioned, at mcturndownforwatt. You can also find the podcast on Twitter and Instagram at TolkienAboutPod. And that's it. Any final parting words?
Nope.
Sounds great. That's what I'm talking about.